Hey guys, Afshin again, and welcome back to another Vex Onshape tutorial. Today I'm going over all the tips and tricks that will make you a faster CADer, from reducing the time you have to spend looking at a loading screen to just improving your overall flow when CADing. Just to note though, some of these tricks can literally cut your CAD time in half, so if you don't want to spend hours staring at a screen, this one's definitely for you. As always though, if you're new to Onshape and want to learn how to start modeling robot or check out how to make drawings. The playlist is on the top right, so check that out. But anyways, let's get straight into the video. Alright, so just for some context, this is a drivetrain that I created a few weeks ago, so we'll be using this as our example to base everything off. But to start with tips and tricks, first thing that's very important is one, using a mouse when you CAD. Because trust me, you can CAD with a trackpad, and it's doable per se, but CADing with a mouse is just so much better, with being able to rotate, holding right click, holding the mouse button and panning, or just being able to drag and select things very easily. But also another thing about movement is using this view pad. So for example, say you get into a very weird spot somehow. So like you're all the way over here and you can't find your CAD no matter what you do, and you somehow lost it. If you just click any of the faces, it will automatically bring you right next to your CAD, so you'll be able to see it really quickly. So that's something really nice where, say you're in an awkward spot looking at something and you don't want to like pan to a normal view or scroll to a normal view, you can just click the view cube and it's really nice. So highly recommend utilizing this. So using that will get you better at just moving and maneuvering around your CAD. But anyways, after that, to actually make loading speeds faster, one thing you can utilize is this tool over here. So if you go to your view cube and come to this cube and you go to the shaded without edges over here, you can adjust this, and by adjusting this, you can essentially increase the speed of your loading because it has less to worry about. So for example, if I go to shaded without edges, it's still visible and everything, but it's like a lot less quality, so it's easier for the platform to load everything. And then the further that you go down with these, the lower quality it gets, but the better faster times you'll load. So like sometimes when I'm loading huge CADs, I'll switch to translucent, and as long as you just generally know what you're looking for and what you're looking at, then it's not that bad maneuvering around. I recommend not doing this though, unless you've like CADed for a while. But this is like one of the few things that you can do to like increase loading speeds by a bunch. So right now there's like no input delay at all. I also recommend having a computer with at least 8 gigs of RAM. You can run it with less. Like for example, I've CADed on my phone before and it's worked. It's not preferable, I would say. It's like kind of slow. So usually you want at least like 8 gigs. You could probably get away with 4 if you really try hard. But yeah, try to have at least 8 gigs of RAM, which is not that bad. Like I've CADed with big CADs on my school computer, which is, if you guys know school computers, they're absolutely terrible. So Onshape loads pretty well. But anyways, I'm gonna go back to shaded with edges just so you guys can see real nice. And then after that, another thing to note is view in high quality. So if you right click anything, you can go and set it to like use best available tessellation, which basically just means make it look real nice. If you have any of your parts set to this, it will decrease the loading time, obviously, because it's trying to make it look better. 99% of the time you don't need it. So you could just leave it as is, and it'll be fine. But that's something you want to watch out for. If you notice that your CADs are getting like slow, just make sure you don't have anything accidentally set to a higher tessellation or just looking better, because that will slow you down. But anyways, after that, then you can like start looking at, if you're still being slow with like CADing and stuff, you can start looking at like removing screws. So most of the time, I would only recommend this if you're not like planning to use a bill of materials. Link to the top, we checked out how to make a bill of materials and utilizing that. But if you're not using a bill of materials and you just want to plan out your robot so you know how to build it, then you really don't need to CAD out screws or shafts or any of the little things, because you don't have to worry about buying them. So when you don't have to worry about buying them, you really don't have to worry about CADing them. And if you're having someone build your, like if you're building your CAD, you should know where you're gonna put screws. Like for example, like all of these screws on the drivetrain, if I wasn't making a bill of materials for this bot in particular, I wouldn't CAD all these screws. Like my first few bots, I never CADed any screws, I never CADed any shafts, unless I needed to cut shafts. So most of the time, you don't have to worry about CADing those. However, it's really important always to CAD your metal, CAD your gears, CAD your motors, CAD your bracings. Those are the really important things that you always want to make sure you have CADed. But after that, now we're gonna look at basically decreasing the amount of things that are over here. So the more functions and tools that you use over here, the more things, again, that this will have to load, and the slower that your CADs will be. So a few ways to like decrease that is, one, using a group tool. So if you like take some stuff, so say for example, or take this screw and if I take this bearing, the screw, and the nylock, and I copy it, and then I group it together, now it will consider this as more or less as one part rather than 3 individual parts. So it doesn't have to worry about loading it as much. Yes, it'll still show as 3 individual parts just because simplicity, and so it can say that it does, but it has less to really worry about rather than if you're to create mates between those 3 parts, because one grouping is one function, while like a fasten mate is, if you're to fasten all these together, that would be like 3 or 4 fasten mates. So using group function really helps, and most of the time it doesn't have to be exact. And even if you create like one fasten mate and then group everything else, you can copy all the groups, and it just increases your speed. So like for example, all of these screws and nylocks and bearings, they're just grouped. They're things that are just grouped together and copy pasted in. So that will help a lot with your CAD time. Another thing is utilizing the mirror tool, and this is something that I found really helps. So I highly recommend learning how to use this. I have a specific tutorial on that, and I'll link that on the top right, so there'll be a video for that. But basically, it allows you to CAD only half your robot, so your program only has to worry about loading half of your robot, and then when you're done with that half, you can just use the mirror tool to mirror the other side, and the other half will show up, and it will show up kinda as like one section. So it's a lot easier for the program to load, and after I found out about this tool, I have been using it nonstop. It's a little hard to understand at first, but once you understand it and you know how to use it properly, it's really nice. And like I said again, I had a link up to the top, so check that out when you guys can. Another thing for condensing all these is using something like inputting assemblies into assemblies. So basically, if we click up here, you can notice that, oh, I have an Omni assembly, which have all these pieces together. And this is something that's really nice to do to like decrease the loading speeds. Like for example, when you have a whole drivetrain CAD or a whole robot CAD, you want to have multiple like sub-assemblies that like put together, and then have those come back in, because then one, you don't have to worry when you're working on these like little parts, you don't have to worry about loading each of them. And then also, if I were to change one of these omnis in that subassembly, you'll change all of them. So it's less like if you have to make edits, it's a lot faster to making edits. So that's one real nice thing. And when you're doing that, it's really important to stay organized. At least I like to, because if you have a lot of these subassemblies, it gets really messy really fast. Like for example, I have this whole folder over here, which you can add folders just by clicking the plus sign and create a folder. But I have this whole folder over here for like different sub-assemblies that I've created and put into here, and the other drivetrains. So when you can, always try to do that. So you can like be faster. And after that, the next thing that I want to touch on is just generally making mates faster. So there's a few ways to do this. One that I've displayed many times before is the S key. So if you click S, it gives all your basic mates right here, right next to your mouse. So like say you're working, if I were to input, like again, I used S to do that, but say I wanted this 1/64th spacer right here. And I could just click S, quickly made it, and made it to here. Oh, and quickly made it to here. So using tools like that is like a lot. It's using the S tool is really fast and really nice to use. Also from there, if you guys saw, if I go back, when I mate, I typically, how I like to do it is I'll click the one thing that I want to mate, and then I'll select the other thing that I want to mate. Well, and I always use shift. Most of the time you don't need to, but I found that it's just faster when you do. And even if it's my last mate, instead of clicking this and exiting out of the mate, I instead like click this check mark and right away click ESC. I found that's faster. Honestly, it's just a preference thing, but it's the little things. So there's that. There's also the like assembly linear pattern and assembly circular pattern. That's also in the video with the assembly mirror. So if you guys check out that video, that one also goes a little bit over speeding up CAD. So definitely check that out. But another thing I want to touch on is actually using hotkeys. So like for example, Fasten Mate, your hotkey, you just can click M and it'll automatically pop up. So that's something that like really nice to use. I typically don't use those as much. I just use S because it's right next to my hand, and my hand, as a gamer, my hand is always on WASD, so I can just easily click S and do that. But if you want to adjust those hotkeys, you can go to your account, go to preferences, and then scroll all the way down and adjust these hotkeys here. There's also, if you guys are coming from different CAD softwares, you can come up here and adjust this. So like if you guys are coming from SolidWorks or AutoCAD or some of these other CAD softwares, you can use those mouse controls and whatnot, so you're more familiar with them. And then also dark mode, light mode's here, so highly recommend dark mode. Then again, I always use dark mode for everything, so that's just a personal thing. But anyways, other than that, I would say that's most of it. The only thing other than that I would say is just have your computer generally just running not that many things while you're CADing. I have a relatively good computer, so I can run like other things while I'm CADing. But especially if you're running with a slower computer, like if I'm working with my school computer, I'll only have the CAD open so that the computer doesn't have to worry about loading a bunch of other things at once. So yeah, but other than that, I think that's mostly everything. So have fun CADing faster. And good luck to all of you in this coming year's game. Anyways, I hope you guys learned something, and we'll see you guys in the next video.